Welcome to our conversation on ways to use course data to support empathetic design for learning. Again, my name is Wendy Swalla and I'm Instructional Design Senior here at WMUx. And I'm just going to share my screen real quick here. All right, so I'm here with Dave Paul, Chair of WMU's Department of Philosophy, and Business Analyst Becca from the Office of Institutional Research, and Cara Junghans, our Accessibility Compliance Specialist. And our goal today is just really to share our experiences, and we have all worked together in different ways to use data to support not only continuous improvement of courses here at WMU, but also empathetic design. That being said, if you're not teaching right now, that's okay, and you aspire to teach, great. And if you're from outside of the university, just recognize that a lot of what we're going to show you today is also available at other institutions. It's just a matter of ferreting it out a little bit at your institution. And so really what this all comes down to is recognizing who our students are, what are their motivations, and what's challenging them, and considering ways that we can, once we find that information, decide how we can improve our courses to support that. And what we find is the more we know, the better and more likely we are to be able to do that. So empathetic design is all about that. It begins with the students and what we know about them. And then we think about what that tells us and ways we can fix our courses and adjust our courses to not only get to know them, who they are, but to think about them before they even arrive. And then we do the best we can to create a course that is useful for them, that meets their goals and our goals as instructors at the same time. But then that also we may have to go back and reiterate, but we don't know if we don't ask them. So there are some basic things that we do as instructional designers. And this whole document, this pre-design considerations document, that is one that my team created to really get at this empathetic design, is what kind of launched this entire conversation that brings us here today. And Dave's going to tell you all about that in just a moment. But essentially, it starts with coming up with a learner profile based on what you know, or what you've gleaned from colleagues if it's your first time taking over a course, or what you know maybe from being a student yourself. And recognizing that we know some things, but we don't know all of it. And we can't know more unless we ask. So this pre-design considerations is something that we ask instructors to do, even if they've taught the course multiple times, because there's always something more to learn about our students. And the more we ask, like I said before, the more we know, and the better we are able to meet their needs and expectations. And those change over time, especially post-COVID. Most of us came back and went, wow, a lot has changed in what they need and what they expect and how they behave. And when the more we ask them, the more we know. So a couple of things to keep in mind with empathetic design. As instructors, ideally, we're always observing our students, and we're keeping track of things. And we know our challenges if we've taught a course once or even multiple times. And that's just from being with them. Then we can collect specific data. We can ask them prospective data, and we'll get to that sort of at the end of this presentation, give you some questions you can ask. You can always reach out to my team, the instructional design team, and we can help you create surveys for your course, not only that you ask at the beginning to get to know your specific learners, but also to know how the course is going at the midterm and how they feel about it at the end. And depending on what you're interested in knowing, that's what we can dig in and find out. And then there's the data that Becca's going to talk about today, and that Dave is kind of dialed into right now. And that's the DFWI rates in the courses and what that can tell you and what that can help you to do. And then it's just, what do we do with that information? And we work on the design, and then we test the design and see if it works. And then we evaluate that and try again. So course design is an iterative process. It's something we don't have to do alone or in a vacuum. My team's here to support you. Your colleagues are here to support you. And the goal is to really just keep dialing back and thinking about what do your students need and how can you help them get there. So that's the gist of what we're doing today. And I'll now hand over to Dave.
Hi, everybody. So Wendy is going to continue to share the slides, and I will try to know when the right time is to advance and back up if we need to. So let me begin. So the first several slides are all where I started and why. So let me give you a little bit of background of how I got here. So a couple of years ago, around the end of 2022, Adrian Redding reached out to me with this great email. And there it is. Gwen Tarbox suggested I reach out to you about an opportunity for your department to share in some resources. Okay, so I didn't know anything about this, but I know Gwen, and I thought, okay, if Gwen suggested that Adrian reach out to me, I better reach out to Adrian and find out what's going on. And this is about DEI issues as well. So, okay, so I was interested. All right. Go ahead, thanks. So I wrote back and said, okay, so what is this all about? And Adrian said, Katie and I will get together with you. We have some things to share with you. And they also sent me an email with some information. So the next slide will show you those DEI data. So I got this email. So first, I have, so go on back, Wendy. So I teach. So I'm the chair, but I also teach, and I sometimes teach some of these courses. So 2250 is our deductive logic class, 2200 is our critical thinking class, 2010 is called Contemporary Problems in Ethics, but it's our Intro to Ethics class, and Phil 2000 is our Intro to Philosophy class. And I was really interested in this data, right? So ignoring the brown shaded bars and or ignoring the gold shaded bars and comparing the gray shaded bars to the brown shaded bars, we see these massive disparities. And I thought, oh, okay, so what's going on? All right, so let's move forward. And I wondered, I said to myself, like, what's going on here? Sometimes, right? Sometimes the DEWI rates for students of color compared to students identified on that slide as white go up, and sometimes they go down. And the data was all from COVID semesters. So I wondered, like, how valuable is this data? Maybe it's not the same as the data pre-COVID, but the goals, right? The goals, finding departmental solutions to the equity gaps, right? It's too easy, I think, for folks to say, well, you know, it's not my problem that there's this gap, it's the student's problem. Well, okay, so what role can the department play in trying to ameliorate some of that? So I thought this was important. I agreed to participate. So I was asked to pick a course out of those courses, and I chose the intro course for a variety of reasons. One of the reasons was I had a hunch, and it turns out my hunch was right. We'll see that in a slide to come. I had a hunch that many of the people teaching that course are relatively inexperienced, which meant I thought there was something I could do about it, right? Because if I can make positive, helpful changes, suggestions, give resources to people who maybe have a little bit less experience in the classroom than I did or some others did, maybe that all by itself would be helpful. So I thought, okay, so let's pick that course and get started. So by the way, the G2C is Gateways to Completion, and this is all so far operating within that framework. So I'm sure there will be shared a Gateways to Completion link somewhere on the Western site. But this is a group of people who have been working to overcome barriers often conceived in certain kinds of courses, preventing students from succeeding. All right. So in order to participate, we agreed to participate. Not every department has participated in this. A handful have. There are cycles of 3-year cycles. And in any given 3-year cycle, a number of departments are all participating at the same time, and they all move through the process at the same pace. And this is the third 3-year rotation of departments through this. So we have the advantage of seeing what people have tried in the past, what has succeeded, this sort of thing. So we needed a committee. So I gathered together some people from the department to serve on this committee. I was very intentional about being very cautious about bringing part-time instructors in on this work. So I happen to have a different perspective than many of my colleagues, and that's because I was a part-time instructor for almost 2 decades. And so I knew a little bit about what it means to ask part-time instructors to engage in service work. But I did it, and I got a couple to agree. I got some TAs to join, and importantly, I asked the College of Arts and Sciences advisor, whose area is philosophy, to join. Okay, so I asked them all to take a look at this stuff, and we started working on what we could do to eliminate barriers for our students. And one of the things we could do to eliminate barriers for our students, maybe some of the students who weren't succeeding because they couldn't afford the materials for the course. Maybe they didn't have a book. So one thing we could do, and there's information about this available at Western. There are opportunities through the library to get grants to either convert existing material to open resource or to create open resource material. So I decided that one of the things that this G2C committee would do is section off a subcommittee, and that subcommittee would work on writing content for this open resource text. That one of our goals is, when this process is done, so this will end up being around June of this year, we will have a published book, open license, that anybody else in the whole world who has access to this kind of license will be able to use this material for free, both as students taking intro to philosophy courses, and here's our key, and here's what we're going for, as instructors. So we want to write a book, not for students of intro to philosophy. We want to write a book for students and instructors of introductory philosophy together, jointly. The joint participation of instructors and students is really important, we feel. All right, so we're working on this text at the same time as we're working through the Gateways to Completions requirements. Next slide. So I get another email. This time I get it from Wendy. And it says this: as we work through the development process, it may be beneficial to explore pre-design considerations. And, lots of us are suckers for a link. By the way, like my friends in OIT, we know what we're doing. We hover over it. We make sure it's not spam. All right. So I followed the link, and it was really interesting. And there was this list of questions. By the way, some of those questions are the very same questions Wendy showed at the very beginning here. And it got me thinking, what's going to happen? What am I being asked? All right, so we move forward. Wow, great questions. Who are our students? Like, this is a really great question. Who are they? I mean, from a certain point of view, they literally change every semester. But what demographic backgrounds might be expected? From very high level, we can say all kinds of things about how many PhDX students we have and what type they are, how many students at Western are the very first person in their family to go to college. We can get that information aggregated, and that's useful. But when we disaggregate it and we talk about the human beings sitting in chairs in the same room that I'm standing in, this matters. What academic or professional backgrounds might be expected? That's a great question. What life experiences or perspectives might they bring? That's a great question. And so I looked at these. By the way, there were more. I looked at these and thought, I don't know what am I going to do? Ask all the students that are taking Philosophy 2000 this question? What am I going to do? So here's what I did. Next slide. I wrote to Wendy, and I wrote to Adrian, and I wrote to Katie, and I said, how do I find this? There's got to be somebody. There's got to be somebody in IR. There's got to be somebody somewhere in the institution who can help me. So I literally asked, if I want to know who's taken this class in the last 10 years or so, again, I was thinking the COVID data is not going to be as useful as the data before COVID. I don't know how many of them were PhDX students. I don't know how many of them in my classroom were. I don't know what percentage were transfer students. Maybe that makes a difference. Maybe were the transfer students more or less successful than the other students in that data? I don't know. What's the breakdown of the students in my class by year? And so I asked, next, right? What about Wes? What about Gen Ed? What about by all these different demographics? I don't know. And I said, I don't have this information. The good news is there are people here who do. So Katie puts me in touch with Becca, and Becca writes back and says, hey, guess what? Like, we can do this for you. It's going to take me a little while though, because this is really kind of specific. And I thought, okay, right. That's fine. So a few weeks later, I get this amazing spreadsheet, like megabytes of data with a ton of tabs along. For those of you who are like spreadsheet nerds like me, the fact that there's a bunch of tabs at the bottom is a really good sign. That means there's a lot of stuff for me to dig through. So I get this. I get 10 years of data. Thank you, Becca. Okay.
Okay, I'll take that as my cue. Thank you for the introduction, David. And hi, everyone. I'm Becca Sly. I am the Business Intelligence Analyst in the Office of Institutional Research. So my piece in this is slightly prefaced there, is what my office does and how we assist and support both inside of WMU as well as our federal and state mandated data reporting. So on the slide, I have our mission statement, and what might jump out to you is maximum value from data. So from our perspective in my office, maximum value of data is that we're able to give data that is complete, accurate, quality, and we can keep track of different changes that happen over time. So in this case, if you are trying to design your course and have these as Wendy had mentioned before, almost like before students arrive, trying to get context clues from data because you don't have immediate access to them. Where do you go? Where could you look just initially off the bat? So I'll get more into that. Below our mission statement, I have our primary functions, like I mentioned, the very important state and federal reporting, which is one of the reasons why we value high quality and accuracy in our data. So being able to define things consistently. So since WMU started in 1903 and they started collecting data, practices have changed. So we're here to support individuals who might have questions. So I know David had talked about some acronyms like FIDIAC. That might be a new term for some instructors. So FIDIAC is first time in any college, a student who is just going into college. That might be a different student than someone who is transferring from another university, or someone who is an international guest student. So we have different classifications, and I can give some examples. The last thing is we help maintain self-service data. So I will go into that. Data we provide. So on this slide, I have a picture of just one of our dashboards on our website where you can see enrollment. That's a very commonly used dashboard. You can break down enrollment by majors, race, ethnicity. We have location, geographical data for where our students are from. You can really get a lot of like high level background on like what students are in your department or in a major which has to take some of these courses that you are providing, and what demographics there are, what's the size, what's the enrollment. So beyond very specific course data that I would consider an ad hoc request, we try to have things available so that you don't have to wait 5 weeks if you need immediate information from us. All right, thank you, Wendy. All right, so I wanted to put a few things just as examples to get your minds working on like what is even available, because I know some people can be intimidated when they think about where do I start. So as I was saying before, one of the first levels of entry is you can look through the dashboards and see student demographic information. That's in the dimension side there of the slide. So these are a little bit of data terminology for you. Dimensions and measures are going to be calculated parts or potentially things that Western has decided if you meet a certain criteria like academic standing, you fall into a academic standing category. So you could look at students who have a probation, or you could see what the GPAs are of students who take specific courses. And then you could also look at prerequisite course grades even. So did they do well in the course that is required for my specific course? So those are just a few examples of what you really could get into from my office. So our primary role is going to be making sure that if you have questions about, for example, what is URM, underrepresented minority, that definition might not be intuitive to you. So that actually includes many different student race ethnicities, but people might not know that if a student identifies as Asian, they would not be considered a URM student, and that's a common thing that we report on. So we are just here as a support to faculty, to administration, in terms of better making sure you understand the data. And if there were changes to the data, we can help identify and make sure we communicate those consistently and accurately. So thank you all for inviting me to this conversation. It's amazing to see and hear what's actually being used and leveraged with the data on campus. And it makes my job even better.
Great, thank you, Becca. And I think one of the things that when you work with instructional designers, our goal is to, if you've collected that data and you've examined it, our goal is just to always remind you that to go into your data recognizing your own biases and know what you're looking for and seek help when you're not sure what it's actually showing you. It might look one way to you, share it with colleagues, share it with us. We can help look at it with you and decide that, okay, maybe this is something we can do to address this problem, or maybe we need to ask more questions to really figure this problem out. And without further ado, I'll turn back over to Dave to tell you what he did with his data.
Thanks. By the way, the 5 weeks comment, I thought 5 weeks was fast. I'm used to the pace of bureaucratic systems. So that 5 weeks was cheerful from my end, right? Right, so now I had some data. So take a look at some things that jumped out to me. For 9 years in a row, 46% of the students taking this class on average are first-year students. And then in 2024, so the very beginning of this academic year, boom, it jumps to 74%. What happened in fall of 23? Great question. Those same years, about 75% are first time in any college. And then it jumps to 91% for this class. Okay, again, what happened? By the way, if I'm making serious considerations about changes to make to my course, and I am taking into consideration who's in my course, there has just been a sudden change of who's in my course, and I should pay attention. So then, right, so for those of you who pay attention to enrollment data, look at that last sentence. Oh, how terrifying. We had an average annual enrollment in all of our sections of that course of almost 300. Then it fell in half, then it fell further, and then it plummeted. So we're coming back. By the way, this wasn't unique to this class. This showed up in some of the department's other courses, and I know from having talked to other chairs and directors that this has been showing up in other departments as well. But that's changing who our students are, and it's important that I have that information. All right, so now I can go somewhere. By the way, I said earlier that I had this intuition about who was teaching our courses. I was spot on. So in that 10-year period, of the 78 sections of that course that were offered, 60 of them were taught by either part-time instructors, 22, or teaching assistants, 38. That is a huge number of, I hate this word, contingent faculty, right? But part of what this suggested something to me for a strategy. All right, so we move forward. Okay, we're working on this text. And at the same time, we're working on creating a new version of the course. And I have some room to do this because if the people teaching it are predominantly part-time instructors and teaching assistants, and I happen to have part-time instructors and teaching assistants on my committee, we can collaborate and we can work on a new version of the course, a new iteration that is designed for those kinds of instructors in mind, designed by those kinds of instructors to help meet their needs so that they can help meet the students' needs. All right, so this group has been meeting regularly. We have a meeting this afternoon at 3:30. We meet in the conference room. We have a whiteboard. We take a ton of notes. We take a bunch of pictures. We then capture everything we did and we continue using it to move forward. So that's what we're doing. Next.
You want another one, or is that the right one, Dave?
We're good. So one of the things one of the promises that I broke, I told the graduate students who at the time were first, so I had first year and second year. We have a master's program, not a PhD. So we have first year students and second year students. And I intentionally, in the first year of G2C, recruited first year grad students. And I said to them, if you work on this, I will offer you a section of the course to teach in your second year because our second year MA students are instructors of record. And it turned out, because of scheduling problems, one of them couldn't be offered this. However, he was offered another course, one of our only 1000 level course, Inquiry, Argument, and Debate, which bears remarkable similarities to the students bear remarkable similarities to our Philosophy 2000 course. And this person was lucky enough to have gone to the Lilly conference and came back with all kinds of insights to help transform his teaching. So we have people on this committee who haven't taught Phil 2000 and aren't teaching Phil 2000, but they are teaching similar sorts of content to similar sorts of students, and the insights that they have gained in other work, they are bringing to the table and we are sharing them. And so not only are we transforming this course, we are also transforming some of our other courses. And really importantly, we are capturing pedagogy. So we will have repeatable structures. Not only are we designing an e-learning shell for this course, we were, by our friends over there, were granted a sandbox version of the course to play in. Once we have this up and running, much of that material is then transportable to other courses. And even if we make changes in the content, some of the other changes that we've made, things to put in the syllabus, things to say in class, ways to connect learning objectives to assessments, will be the same. And they will also apply to, and this is important for me, our other part-time instructors and teaching assistants. All right. This is then making some suggestions to us for assessing students' work. So for instance, I taught, during this time, I've taught a couple sections of this course myself. And one of the changes I made, and I started the change 2 years ago, I had never done this before, was we take our tests in class and the students bring their laptops to class and they work on their laptops in class. And I give them the prompts, project them on the board. They're also available in e-learning. The students just sit and write and they're quiet and they can come up and ask me questions if they're struggling. We have a learning assistant in that class. I've given I have a good relationship with the LA, and the students who are taking the test can pick up their laptop and walk across the room and sit down next to the learning assistant and point at what they're typing as a response to my question and say to that learning assistant, am I on the right track? And I have a relationship with my learning assistant, and she knows what she's allowed to say and what she's not allowed to say. And she knows that it's kind of her job to help them without giving them answers. And so that's a change we've made. That's sort of a classroom policy, and our scores have gone way up. So this has been super helpful. By the way, for those of you who are interested in what might seem an unrelated issue, this AI and teaching thing, one of the things I did on the days of the tests was I projected. I put ChatGPT, I put Cloud, I put some other ones up on the board. I typed in my prompt, I put it in there. My not engineering prompt, but my question on my test. I put it in there and I said, well, here's ChatGPT's answer to my question. What do you think about that? Letting my students know that I know what an AI response looked like. But I also encouraged them. I also encouraged them to do things like I gave them very specific prompts and said, go ahead, use this prompt, use your response to the answer, and go ahead and ask ChatGPT, you know, what it thinks your limitations are, what you haven't done well. They're doing this in the classroom with me. At the end of the class period, they send me an email of all the work they have done, and then by 9 p.m. they have to turn their test in the Dropbox. So something goes wrong, their day goes off the rails, they never turn in their test. Sometimes we have a problem with students not turning in work that we're literally watching them do, and then they don't turn it in. Okay, they've already turned in a portion. I can give them partial credit. I can give them a C, whatever. Those are changes that I hadn't used before that I started using, and the relief on the faces of my students, just knowing that that they know that I trust them in this space. By the way, I've taught classes of 180 students. This would be a different animal with 180 students. So I get that. All right, moving forward. So I looked at that enrollment and I thought, oh my gosh, what's going on? Should we offer a course at night? And by the way, before I decided to offer a section of this course at night, I wrote to the advisors over at Merz Tate and I said, hey friends, what do you all think about offering night courses for courses that are dominated by first-year students? And Richard wrote back to me immediately. I swear he must have been like watching his inbox when my message showed up. And he said, do it in the spring, don't do it in the fall. And he told me why. He said, students coming here, especially from a high school, don't have it in their structure of how education works to think about night courses the same way they do after they've been here for a year. The switch from I'm taking 6 or 7 classes a day, 5 days a week, to I'm taking 3 or 4 classes once in a while, every other day, and I have a ton of free time to not get anything done and wonder what happened to my grades. That shift by itself is too much. He said, if you offer it in the spring, I bet it'll work. And sure enough, we're offering 3 sections of the course right now this spring. They have low enrollments, 12, 14, and 15, but the course with 15 is the night course.
Lovely.
Right, so there we go. I needed help. So there's my other piece of advice, like talk to the advisors. If you're a faculty member and you don't know if you don't know your advisors, find out, talk to your chair, find out who the advisors are, strike up conversations with them, get to know them. As far as I'm concerned, that's every bit as important to understanding my students as the data that I got from Becca is the advice I got from the advisors. So part of the Gateways to Completion is this tool called the Student Learning Gain Survey. So the students in G2C courses receive a separate survey. This is different from the student evaluations. And this is great on the data collection side. So this means that every semester that we're offering this course, not every G2C group chooses to assess in the spring. They're all mandated to in the fall. I've chosen to in the spring. We gather, the same questions are asked, and the questions that are asked about the student's perception of what they're getting in their course. And that's really useful information. And it's really useful information for me to get this semester after semester after semester after semester. One of the things that I've always done myself is I've always made changes to the student evaluations that I give to my students. And then I come to class near the end of the semester and I beg them, please, 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 please fill out my student evaluations, because I've asked very specific questions about my class and I want you to answer them because I will use your responses to make the next iteration of my class better. I promise you this matters because students last semester, students the semester before that, responded to my questions, and I have made changes to the class that I'm offering you. And enough of my students agree to do this that I get much better responses than I used to. So another piece to all of this is gather your own data. Okay.
All right, and that's gonna bring us to Cara, and then we'll give you some of those questions you can ask in your class, like I said, in just a moment here, but Kara's gonna talk a little bit about the specific type of data she deals with and that can be provided through e-learning and other resources.
All right. Hi, everybody. So I have a few different types of data that you can access to help you in the pre-design and in-design process when you're building your courses and your content. I work with accessibility, and it's really important to me that this is in your pre-design process, that you're being proactive when you're looking at your student demographics and designing learning for them. So the first slide I have here is every semester I pull data on what is going on at our university, how many students, how many registered disabilities do we have, and where are they? So here, it's not a very exciting slide because it's just a screenshot of some data, but you might be excited to see it because there are more tabs to this. We can break it down. We've got the colleges here, but then we can break it down by departments and actually see what's going on, what types of students with disabilities you need to be prepared for, so that when you get your accommodate notification from our Disability Student Services office that you are going to have a student that requires accommodations, you may already be prepared. So this is a really great thing to know. We can share that with you if you reach out to the instructional design team. I typically run this data after the first drop add date. So you can look here and say, well, you know, we do have 6 students that are deaf and hard of hearing in our department. And you can be proactive with your faculty to let them know how to get closed captioning on their videos for their courses, or to talk about presentations. Maybe you meet online in Teams or with WebEx, and how to ensure that they are accessible and things and everything runs smoothly for you, so the student doesn't have to be interrupted or has to wait more time to get access. So kind of a neat thing to do, especially when you're looking at those pre-designed questions of like, what demographic backgrounds can I expect from my students? This is one of them. So we'll go on to the next one. Another type of data that you can get from e-learning that is specific to your course is Ally for eLearning. There is a group, a course report that is automatically generated for each course. You as the faculty are the only one that can access this, but it's a really awesome tool. It means that you can look at the diversity of the types of content that you're uploading to your course for your students. Beyond the diversity, you know, instead of having all just PDFs, it will let you know if that's all you've done in there, because you want to give them a little bit more choice, be a little bit more flexible with that. This is also going to help you fix digital accessibility problems with individual pieces of content. So it's a pretty powerful tool. I have done and will be doing more events and learning events with the faculty development team and instructional design team. So if you have more questions, you can reach out to me directly or review some of the trainings that we've already hosted. But this is available to you. You can work on and measure what's going on in your course as you're building it, and it will let you know any accessibility issues as you upload your content. The next one, yes. So here I just have a screenshot of the class progress. This is from inside of eLearning, and as the plug on March 27th, there is going to be another learning event that is going to dive a lot deeper into this to show you the ins and outs of the data that you can produce. Beyond you being able to access this learner progress, and WMUx can provide additional data sets that includes, you know, student engagement in usage beyond this, maybe with certain specific pieces of content or media that you upload. We are using some e-learning reporting to look after we redesigned one of the G2C's online components in e-learning. We're looking to see if the student engagement is a little bit deeper. So we have found that it is with some of the data that we've been able to produce. And we've also employed surveys with students to find out what they like about that. So with our G2C group, we have students that are retaking this course for the second time, and to be able to look at data and how it's changed, or thoughts from the students on what's better or what else is still needed, has been really helpful to us as designers. So being able to look at what's going on inside your course, you can access a basic progress level, progress data of your students, but we can go a little bit deeper and get a little bit more quality than what you see on here. So please reach out to us if we can help you explore some data points and to understand what you need.
Well, thanks, Cara.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Cara and I have been working on, and that my team will always do, is encourage instructors to ask questions. And no, you can't ask everything, nor should you, but there are some basic things you can ask. And on a personal level, you can start with just, what do your students want to be called? And what are some challenges they know exist for themselves? And what are their goals for your class? We can help design introductory surveys for your course that can help get at the information that you think will be valuable for you in building an inclusive, collaborative course for your students that is hitting what they need to hit, that helps them have a plan for what they want to do. But you can't know that if you don't ask, and they won't think about it necessarily if you don't encourage them to do that. And what's nice about asking these questions on day one, especially if you use something like a Google Sheet or Google Form to do it, is then when you meet with them, hopefully at midterm with conferences, you can come back and say, how are you doing on meeting that goal? Is there anything I can do to help? And you may have an idea, again, like we talked about before from that early data, who's coming in, but you don't know exactly who's there unless you ask. And yes, if you have hundreds of students in a class, it can be challenging, but you can still ask the questions. And then the way that on a Google form, particularly, that data will be put together, you can sort of start to see maybe pockets of students who have similar interests or pockets of students who have similar challenges, and that can give you a way to update your course. Another thing is, like I said, at the midterm, to check in with your students. This is what Cara was saying. We can look at our progress and see they're maybe not engaged with one material or another, or they're not submitting certain things. And I'll use that data. I'll have students go look at that data because they have access to it too. You know, how's your course progress? How are you doing? Is it what you expect? Does it match your grade? Does it suggest maybe you need to dive in a little bit more? But then asking these core questions of, what about this course is working for you? What isn't working for you? What could we improve? Where are your challenges still? And when we ask these questions, it means we can turn around and have a conversation with our students about how they can improve what they're doing, or we can maybe support them in achieving in the course. And that's something we can do at the midterm. We can't change everything. We can't make everything better. I can't get rid of discussions. It's something they need to do in a fully asynchronous course, but I can help students find them better. I can give more reminders if that's helpful to them. I can offer different choices in how they respond if that's what they need. And they'll tell you. And the more conversation we have like this, the better our relationship is with the students. And again, the better we're able to meet their needs. And the last thing is, Dave adds these to the university survey. I do mine in my course, but at the end of my course, I usually have them come back and reflect on their key takeaways, their overall experience. They do this on their own, but this I've already created with them. They're used to talking to me through surveys and used to my responses. And then what did they enjoy most? What didn't they? And how is it going to help them later? Because those are the things that make teaching better for us as instructors, because we know going forward what our last students got out of it, and we can share their insights. Some instructors have students write letters to the next group. That's part of the final project. There are all sorts of things you can do. My team, Becca's team, Cara's team, we're all here to help make instruction easier for you and a better experience for you and your students. I just want to say thank you for coming